Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the 7th episode of the PureJoy Podcast, a bi-weekly exploration into what brings people joy. This is the 7th episode, and today I find myself inviting on a very special guest, very important to me. This is going to be my brother. I have two older brothers. This is the middle brother of the three of us. His name is Casey. Let's swing over there and introduce him. Let's see. All right. Hello, Casey. Can we hear you?
Hello.
Hello. Welcome on in.
Thank you.
How's it going? Let's start with introduce yourself to us here.
Yeah. So I live in Albuquerque. I guess that's a nice first thing, introduction. Yeah, live here with our cat and my partner, Amy. Yeah, just I'm unusually tired today. I don't know. I'm catching up on sleep, I think. So trying to not let my eyes get too heavy on you here.
I find myself the same way today. It is the first cloudy day in a little while, and so my morning walk didn't do me as well as it normally does, I think, today.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. It's lovely to have you on. We've been talking about this project on and off as we speak for a little bit now, and I'm excited to start to have you guys on now that we're getting there. I don't know, we're getting to a solid point, and it's nice to have you here.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here.
We like to start each episode off with a little question, and that is a small joy, something that's brought you joy just today.
My small joy today, I would say, is having the time to read for a couple hours. It's not an unusual thing, but lately I haven't had as much time. So yeah, just being able to relax a little bit in between Sunday chores and get some reading time in. It's been nice.
What did you read today?
It's called The Dragon's Path. It's the co-writer of the sci-fi series The Expanse started writing fantasy on his own. And so it's his first fantasy series, the first book in his first fantasy series.
Okay, I like that. I like the very in-depth. Are we talking like high fantasy, sort of like the, I don't know, like Dragon Riders of Pern style?
Yeah, I would say it's considered high fantasy. I mean, this first book's interesting because I like the style. It's kind of building up to it. Like, you could tell it's high fantasy. There's a lot of alluding to the fact that there's going to be probably dragons and different kinds of magic, but there's not a lot of that happening now. So there's it's kind of like a slow burn, you know.
A little bit of intrigue before the fire takes off.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I like that. My small joy today is that Gabe returned home a few hours ago from work, and there is a new bag of coffee. He has a coffee service that sends him a bi-weekly bag of coffee or something, and we have been focusing more on making it as they're make it this way for the best results, so we make it that way. We do the tasting, and we give them the proper responses so that we can develop hopefully a really, I don't know, the fantastic bags from the service, because they're all good. They're all good coffee, but I don't know, I've had a coffee before that I was just blown away by. When I told the dude how much I loved it, he even gave me a free pound, because he's no one loves my coffee this much. I was this is an incredible pound of coffee. So it was nice. It was fun to do the little thing where we brewed a cup and sat down, and we did a little bit of bean tasting and proper smelling and tasting, just to see what that was. And it was a nice little coffee experiment.
That sounds like fun. Yeah, it's hard to pull the best out of the coffee, and depends on a million different factors. So that sounds like a fun experiment.
Yeah. At least an attempt to give what they gave us a shot and see if that's right for us. Well,
is it a different company that sends them, or A different roaster, or
Yeah,
is it all the
yeah.
same
So
roaster?
it's from one company, but this company like it's like a mystery box of
Yeah,
stuff. So
yeah.
like based
Okay.
on our previous responses and like what we're after for next time, they'll send us from
See.
possibly a different roaster. I know I've seen the same name a few times because I've been
Yeah,
tasting some of his coffees over the years. You know,
it's fun.
they have like a probably a smaller list of roasters, but enough variety so far that it's been an interesting time.
Yeah, it's good to
Yeah.
switch. I mean, I don't know. It's good to switch it up. It makes it keeps it interesting as well.
On to our topic at hand. What in life brings you pure joy?
My pure joy, when I sat down to think about it, I'm sure all of your guests have like multiple things in their life, but when I sat down to think about it, the one thing that I kept coming back to is growing food. Like, if out of everything I do, that's the thing that I just love the most.
Yeah. Is that I mean that I think I know I'm maybe the answer to a lot of my questions because we've conversed a lot of over the years. But is that something? So this is growing food is something that you have been doing for a long time. How much of your life have you been doing this form of activity?
It feels like longer than it's been for me. It's been about 10 years that I've been actively interested in growing food. So, yeah, and I say growing food as a broad topic because anything related to growing or even like wild harvesting, anything food related,
Hmm.
for me falls in this broad category. So, yeah, about 10 years I started cultivating actively, and then kind of rocketed to proportions to where it became a career path.
Hmm.
So in a roundabout way. So yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. Where did this all sort of begin 10 years ago?
So family farm in South Texas. When we were growing up, we lived and did some work on the farm, and didn't enjoy it. And as will happen, absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Hmm.
So went back down there in around 2012, and like just because I needed to get away from the city. I was living in Chicago before you got there. Yeah, and just fell in love with it. So it went from like kind of modern agriculture to organic to beyond organic and permaculture, and now I do a lot of soil health work and soil food web work currently. So it's been this constant progression, and I like to I choose hobbies where there's never ending learning experience, and I assume most hobbies can be like that, but yeah, so it kind of snowballed, and there's always more to learn, more to research. So kind of part of what I like about it.
Yeah, yeah. This sort of I don't know, I would even go as far maybe as to say as like lifestyle for you has been developing leaps and bounds beyond from this sort of modern traditional farming to what you stepped off into aquaponics even
Yeah,
for a long while, right? Talk to us a little bit
yeah.
about that. What is aquaponics for the layman?
So aquaponics, at its base level, it's usually a soil-less growing process where you either float rafts on water, or sometimes people use different kinds of rock or something along those lines as a general term
Hmm.
to grow plants in. And you circulate the water through a fish tank, and the fish, through their byproducts, create the nutrients. And there's organisms that convert the ammonium from the fish into nitrites and nitrates. It's like bacteria in there. That's the base of it. So if anybody knows about hydroponics, it's similar. The main difference is that you add fish. You're less reliant on bottles of chemicals and highly balanced nutritional things for the plants, and more
Interesting.
reliant on fish
I
for those
actually
things.
I thought actually that those two words were interchangeable. I actually don't know that I ever thought about them as two separate words. I think my brain thought that they were the same word, hydro and aquaponics. But
Yeah, so
aquaponics introduces fish into the equation as like a sort of
yeah.
self-sustaining system.
Yeah, that's the idea. There's obviously like a lot more to it, and some people still like tinker with the nutrients a little bit, but the idea is for it to be more sustainable and self-contained. Yeah, like you said. Somebody told me once before the hydroponics, he called it bottleponics. because there's like bottle newts,
Okay, yeah.
and it's always like plastic bottles for this and that. And this guy was like a big aquaponic enthusiast, and so that was one of his arguments for aquaponics, is that there's less of that involved
So
generally.
less plastic in general,
Yeah.
the usage of those bottles. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
It seems like it's more along the path of like what you would be aiming for with the traditional hydroponics
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more difficult because you're dealing with like a live element in the fish.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to know aquaculture as well as plants. It throws a whole nother thing into the balance. And this isn't to say that hydroponics can't be done
Hmm.
in a more natural way. Also, you can do it with biology. It's just like tradition, or usually it's done with bottles. So,
Okay.
I try my best not to speak in absolutes, but
Right.
um, yeah, that's how it's generally done. So yeah, I did that for a while. I was like really into aquaponics and started a business with a friend, and it didn't work out in the end, but it was a lot of fun. And yeah, we started doing just like going for it. Like when you just go for something, our slogan was just put some fish in it. So anytime we were like, just go for it, because one time we got a bunch of fish from the sky and we like weren't ready for them, but it was like, all right, well, put the fish in it.
We
So
have the fish.
every time after that, it's like our just go for it was put some fish in it.
Put
So
some fish in it. That's funny.
yeah.
That's great. I mean, even though it didn't end in like a successful business, I'm sure that you learned a lot. That evolved in its own right, because now you're doing another business with what you got going on. And even before the soil health that you are into now, you got into the mushrooms for a little bit, right? There was like a
Yep.
few mushroom classes. Talk to us a little bit about these
Yeah.
mushroom classes. These have always
Yep.
intrigued me.
I'm obsessed with fungi in general, and was growing gourmet mushrooms for a little bit. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, in the best way possible. Like it's so intriguing just in general to cultivate fungi, and then to cultivate them for edibility is really fun, especially when you start to get all your equipment and do the thing from beginning to end. So yeah, was growing mostly oysters in 5-gallon buckets, bucket culture. I grew some lion's mane, and I think those were the main two that I was growing. And I became a little I actually wanted to do commercial mushroom farming for a while.
Okay.
All disillusioned with the industry because, again, as a general rule, this isn't case all around, but in large scale mushroom farms, they use these bags and they put sawdust with other things in there, or I mean, usually, and they call them blocks. And then so they grow the mycelium out on the blocks, and then they cut them open to fruit, and then they throw away the plastic bags. So these larger farms are doing, hundreds and hundreds of these blocks a week, and so
Mm,
single-use plastic, hundreds and hundreds of
tons
bags.
of plastic bags. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I kind of went away from that. I mean, you can do log culture, depending on where you live.
Like
There's
like a
also,
like a just a chopped down tree, like a decaying wood sort of thing. Okay.
yep, you cut it into logs and you plug them with either dowels or sawdust, and it's been myceliated, and stack them in different ways, and leave them in the shade and water them, and then they take longer to fruit the first time, but then they fruit for much longer,
Mm.
as far as like total length, not per season. But yeah, so that's still something that's on my list of to do in the future, just for funsies. And then there's bottle culture too. So there's different things, but a large part of at least the people that I know that grow on the scale up, they use the bag culture a lot. Blocks.
Okay.
So
Yeah, yeah. Did any of this, I don't know, the enjoyment in this learning about the fungi and the research of this situation sort of lead into the soil health culture and the soil health situation that you got going on now?
that's an interesting question. I've never thought about that. I would assume yes, in some roundabout way. Like the more that you get into it, and like and research, and you're looking at some of these well-known like market gardeners and reading their books and other permaculture books, there's always crossover.
Hmm.
So, I mean, nothing particularly comes to mind as far as crossing over to the soil
Right.
health. But now that I'm there, a lot of what I learned through the mushroom cultivation, has helped me understand part of the soil health and soil food web stuff. So.
Okay. So then tell us a little bit about what all this has led to now, and like what you where your love finds you focused at this moment, or at this,
Yeah.
juncture.
Came full circle, man. I went from modern chemical ag to organic to aquaponics, soilless medium, and then microgreens and gourmet mushrooms, and then now back to back to the soil and falling in
Back
love
to
with
the
the
soil.
soil.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing the last 5 years. A deep dive into soil food web and soil microbiology.
Mm-hmm.
And currently, I do some farming at a farm-to-table restaurant in Albuquerque for part of my paid work. I also do a lot of work with soil microbiology on the side, and hoping to do more and more of that. So that is an everyday thing for me. Healthy plants require healthy soil. So as much as I love growing food and tending plants, it's extremely dependent on the health of the soil. Whether you have livestock that are out on pasture, or you're growing annual veg, perennials, it all requires healthy soil to have healthy animals and healthy plants. So yeah, there's that, and then that's kind of led further into something that's related but not quite. I'm developing a compost thermometer that you can monitor your compost remotely. So that's been a lot of fun and something that I've never done before as far as like developing a product. So again, related, but not directly.
Yeah, no, I mean you're getting into the deep dive of the soil health. It has really, I would say, come full circle, because like while working in like chemical based agriculture, your hands are still down in the dirt. Like that's like back to where it was.
Yeah, and it's something. Well, in the circles that I roll in with the plants and ag and stuff, it's becoming a bigger. People are starting to pay attention to it, but before. And people have for a little bit, and when I say a little bit, I mean like 10 or 15 years. But even now, it's still like we know so little about the soil. It's like mind-boggling how much we don't know. It's one of those things like we don't know what we don't know type of things.
Yeah, I guess we probably, I would assume like myself would just take it for granted. Just soil. And I know that the makeup of that soil is important to like even just like houseplants and the various houseplants, but nothing beyond like, oh, it needs a more aerated soil or a rockier soil or a, sandy soil or whatever that be. Do I, I sort of just, I think, take granted thinking that that might be all the knowledge I need. But like what goes into the makeup and the life going on in that soil to make it that soil.
Yeah.
Something I've never really thought of.
Yeah, there's the soil chemistry side, which I don't really deal with much. Actually, it's something I'd like to learn more about, or plant chemistry, I guess, more so than soil chemistry, just to understand like what plants need or what we think they need chemically. On the deepest level, like on a chemical level, not adding chemicals to them. Well, everything.
Right, but like like we need really, water because it's one of the things that we require. We require oxygen. We want to know like what the plants require on the chemical level.
Yeah. But and then you have like soil structure, which is like you're saying, like sandy soil or more clay heavy soil or loam, and that's like classical soil science are those thoughts. And people are starting to realize that the biology of the soil is just as important, if not more important, than these other things that we've been focused on since the agricultural revolution, and that have been largely ignored. I think because the soil was in good condition, or decent condition at least, for a long time.
Sure, yeah.
And have to think about it, or people like, and you can't see it.
It wasn't a problem until we ruined it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And you don't, I mean, back in the like 40s, 50s, 60s, you don't think about it as much because it's microscopic. So it's not in your face. So yeah, but it's kind of wrapped back around, and people are coming on board. So exciting.
Yeah. And now you find yourself going back to school even. I know that's sounds like more of a jumped opportunity because you have this great opportunity to take these courses for free, right? That's a big bonus, but you chose biology to, I'm assuming, link into this
Yeah,
sort of passion.
yeah, definitely. To learn more about all things related to life. Honestly, I would study mycology. That is where I would go. But interestingly enough, it is almost impossible to find undergraduate mycology degrees. It's most of it at this point in time is at the graduate level and beyond, where you can really like get in depth with that stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
there's one guy, the guy who started me on the path of fungi and mushrooms. His name is Peter McCoy. He's relatively well known these days in the psychology world. He wrote this amazing book. I've read it front to back. It's a huge book. But he started an online class for or multiple courses, an online kind of coursework thing. This is supposed to be collegiate level to teach mycology. So he's like one of the first ones to do it, even though it's not in a university setting. It's up to those standards.
Oh,
Anyway,
okay,
so
okay, yeah, but it's
yeah,
just not offered at that level. You're able
yeah, it's not like,
approach it
and I
from
think
not in that degree.
yeah, it's I think one of their goals is to like be able to offer similar courses and people get college credit for it actually.
Okay,
Um,
okay,
anyway, I haven't taken any of them, but I
sure.
guess my point was that for university level, it's limited, and so long story long, the biology, as far as the university that's accessible to me here in Albuquerque, was the closest that I found that would be down the same career path as I'm doing, and also something I would enjoy. There's
The,
other degrees I could do that would be fun, but not as
right,
practical.
the closest stepping stone in this situation that has been presented
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
So, out of the, I guess, career part of it, what about this topic, this sort of like nature taking care of the food? Where do you think that all of this sort of stems from? What about it do you love so much?
That's a good question. So I can talk about soil health and soil microbiology for days,
Mm-hmm.
and it relates so closely to having healthy plants and healthy animals, regardless of if you're gonna consume the animals or not, just to be a steward of animals on a piece of land. But the reason I chose growing food is because that's something that I find is very rewarding for me. And so to answer your question, where it stems from, for me, I thought about this a little bit, thinking about the topic in
Mm-hmm.
our interview, and I think it's just so rewarding when you grow something and you harvest it. But it's also hard. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done.
It
Um,
is, yes.
yeah. I always tell people if I didn't like it so much, I wouldn't do it, because it's like it's fucking it feels impossible sometimes to be good at it, and it's really not. It's just a lot of work. I mean, it's a ton of work, but that's also what I like about it, because when you are successful, it feels so good. So my stepdad always says, he's a farmer, and he says you have to be all these things if you want to be a farmer or a good gardener. And this is at any scale, mostly kind of thinking about like small to mid scale, but even like large scale ag, it's similar concepts. You have to be a botanist, you have to be a meteorologist because you have to follow the weather, an entomologist because you're dealing with bugs, a virologist because you have plant pathology, you have to be a mechanic to a certain degree, working on equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these disciplines, you have to know at least a little bit about all of them, or a lot. And I think that's part of what makes it so hard. And then of course you're dealing with something that we don't understand that much, and we're people trying to understand plants. And so yeah, I think that's what really interests me, is the difficulty level.
Yeah, it's also interesting that you say that because like much like myself, I feel like fall pretty prone to like ADD, ADHD, and the like the symptoms that it kind of entails with that. And something like this sort of lifestyle that requires a sort of base understanding of a skew of different subjects might be beneficial to that, might like kind of help abate the symptoms because you have so many different things to focus on, right? Like, oh well, today is a mechanics day because I have to fix this piece of machinery, and today is, now for the next hour I have to deal with the weather and like what's going to be going on, and you get to like focus on so many different maybe subjects. It might actually be pretty beneficial to that. It's just intriguing. I find myself
Yeah,
thinking a lot about what creates a sort of a successful dealing with, I don't know, some more severe ADHD moments.
yeah, I would agree. I have quite a few obsessive tendencies, and yeah, I think it helps. Actually, could probably use to do some more meditation and stuff to calm the mind, but I don't calm it in the same way I used to with drugs and alcohol, and so I feel like since I stopped using, my mind is like a lot more active, and I like, I guess part of what I used to use for was like to calm it down,
Hmm.
and so the meditation helps with that. But yeah, I agree. Like subjects like that gives you a lot of different avenues to pursue, and so it's nice to have the opportunity to do that. And I think it's also primal. It's like, for me, it's a primal thing to grow food. It's a necessity. We all need it, and it's like one of those things where, yeah, I'm not inherently good at anything. Like, I have to try real hard, but it makes me feel good when I am successful. Like, it makes me feel like, oh, maybe maybe I'm, at least decent at this if I can like grow a tomato, or like, pick a peach or
Okay,
something.
well, if I can grow a tomato, maybe I'm decent at this because like comparatively the things like you're right. You have to put in a lot of work. It's a ton of work and like understanding of what the like what's occurring, giving it the time that it requires, giving it the like physical labor that it requires. Even just like last year I attempted to garden in our little plot back in the backyard, and I maybe made out the tomatoes succeeded and some potatoes succeeded, and I felt great when I had a bowl of potatoes and I was like, look what I have done with my whole summer. But like, how much you told Darren and I one time about how much food you had, like how much fruit you had picked off of the trees. How much fruit had you picked?
Yeah, I think it was peaches last year. It was like 500 pounds or something. So it
500
was
pounds. It's
pretty
not
good.
a tomato. That is
Yeah,
a quarter
yeah.
ton
But
of
see, yeah,
peach.
it's true. But yeah. But it also, then it comes back to like, that's what I do though. Like
Yeah,
if I was to do something that you do, like try
that's
to
true.
hook up some AV equipment or something, and I did it, I would be like, yay,
That's
and you'd be like, that's nothing.
I get. I mean, I guess that holds true. I don't know. I think that I don't know the amount of food that you talk about having like harvested and grown and like been a part of like a steward of its growth over the
Hmm.
time, like that we do our like family game nights that we've been doing those that like it's a ton. That's a lot of food, like tons of
Yeah.
food, which is incredible. Like, not only do you love doing this thing, but you do it at a level that goes to feed other people, right? Because you certainly didn't eat 500 pounds of peaches.
Right.
What did you do?
Yeah,
Was that like work peaches you were harvesting, or was
that was
that
the work. Yeah.
okay?
So I'm lucky enough to run the farm at this farm to table restaurant called Farm and Table in New Mexico,
Okay,
in Albuquerque, and I'm lucky enough to have the opportunity to grow some annual vegetables, but also the goal of me being there is not to grow vegetables for the restaurant. It's to take care of the land and do more of a permaculture approach. So care for the land, care for the soil, both long term and short term. So there's not a ton of pressure to grow annual veg. We put a lot of perennial plants in the ground, and trying to go from where it used to be, which was intensively grown organically, but organic doesn't necessarily mean good for the land, organically grown. So went
sure.
from a market gardener that used to use the land to them wanting to focus on caring for the land. So that's where they brought me on. And yeah, there's some peach trees in the parking lot that we take care of, and that's where the peaches came from.
Okay, yeah. Lots of foods. It's great that you get to use this this thing that you find joy in to also, provide for a community at large. That's another bonus, at least feeling that you can harvest from the situation in some form or fashion. Do you have any goals or any dreams that you would like this to sort of lead to, or something that you haven't learned yet that you want to dive on into?
Yeah, my goal for this is to help more people care for more land in a healthy way. So as much as I love growing food and doing agriculture, I've got personal goals, and then I've got career goals. On the career side, for a while I wanted to do market gardening, but and as noble as that is, I wanted to try to make a larger positive impact on the world. So that's why I really got into the soil health work, because it can be a residential lawn, that somebody's dumping Roundup and lawn fertilizer on, and I can help them transition to a healthier way of caring for the soil. Or I could do 500 acres of corn. So it's a broad range that can be affected, I think, and so that's my goal, is to learn more about soil biology, because I would say I'm pretty knowledgeable as far as what we know collectively, and I still have a lot to learn regarding what we know as a whole. But then there's like so much untapped potential there. And then personally, my goal is to have a little homestead of sorts, and I'd love to steward some animals for harvesting for eggs and also meat chickens and maybe some other animals. But I've done a little bit of stewarding animals for food, but not a whole lot. So that's something I'd like to do more of and learn more about too.
I think I recall back in the days of the aquaponics business, I think you had said at some point that your goal, or maybe it was that the goal of aquaponics is to create this sort of self-sustaining system. Is that like part of that personal goal, is the sort of a more self-sustaining, like I would assume that would kind of transition into less impactful footprint as well.
Yeah, it is. I've grown personally a lot since those days, because I used to want to do everything myself. Like I can do it all. And then I've learned since then that it really does take a community. And for me, for myself, I don't want to go like live off grid in an intentional community or anything. Not that I have any issues with that, but I've come to accept and appreciate the fact that I might not be the one that makes like that. I love to do some canning, but I might not be the one in the community that's like the canner or whatever. So yeah, I do want to lessen my impact, become more self-sustaining, but I also want to rely on other community members who enjoy and are good at doing other things. So homesteading and growing as much food as I can, but then also like balancing that work with work that other people do better than me.
That makes sense. Having that community around you that
Yeah,
maybe can even just trade goods and services for goods and services.
right. And it's a tough subject for me, because more and more people are moving to cities all the time, and urban agriculture is getting bigger, and so things like hydroponics and aquaponics make a lot of sense because you can do them vertically. They're not my favorite ways to grow these days, but I think, again, the more we learn, the more we can grow more kinds of plants and do it in better ways in cities. That's not, again, to say that we'll get away from soil-based agriculture either.
Sure.
Monocropping and large-scale agriculture on the whole are nasty business, I think, and we need a lot of diversity in our lives.
Yeah.
Period. But also in ag, having a nice mixture and not monocropping and doing. So for me, the thing with the scale is like a too small a scale is as hard and maybe maybe not as destructive, but it's also not as beneficial as like a medium scale, I think, because monster scale is crazy. You have all this equipment. It's a totally different beast. But if it's too small a scale, it's almost not worth it because you're putting in so much work for like a couple bites of food.
Right, right.
It's
That
worth it
has
because it's
to.
fun.
That has to, but it should if you're talking about like long term and caring about the impact on your the surrounding area and environment that you're putting it out, is that if you're doing that, it's important to balance those costs. How much, not only like time and your own effort are you putting in, but how much fuel, how much product, how much other labor is going
Water.
in. Water, exactly. Nowadays,
Yeah.
I'm learning that there is a finite amount of water. How is that something that is not being talked about before?
Yeah.
It just feels weird that it's been phrased that way to me recently, and it's like sinking in that there isn't an infinite amount of water.
It's true. I mean, there really is. Like the water that's here, it gets recycled over and over and over. But the hard thing is that what usually, like where it's going, are places where it can't be accessed.
Right.
And we're doing things to our forests and stuff so that the hydrological cycle gets thrown off. Somebody made the argument to me a long time ago, like, oh, but the water's still there; it's not going anywhere. But just like you're saying, it's not like it. Yeah, it's there, but it's not.
It
Like,
is kind of going somewhere, right? Exactly, it is going
so
somewhere.
It's finite in that sense. I
Like,
mean,
it's
infinite
not.
in this. It's not escaping the atmosphere, right? But it's
Well, yeah, but like if
you
we
still can't get it.
right, naturally it's evolving now. The water is just moving in different areas because of the way that we have been pulling it, right?
Yeah.
And our usage on it. I think this is the first opportunity I've gotten to ask someone who's been doing the thing that they, their subject for 10 years. What is your favorite takeaway from doing this as a lifestyle and having this love?
My favorite takeaway, I would say, is
Or maybe like the best
that's a good
lesson that
question.
you've learned that from this
Oh yeah,
situation, or
I'll,
yeah.
I'll give you a good lesson.
Okay.
You're gonna kill things. Period. Like you're gonna fail a lot, and that's like it's not something I like, but it's been a good personal growth experience for me. Like failing a lot and over and over and over, and having to like just keep coming back and doing it again. Whether you like lose half of your crop or your whole crop, or like you kill a nut tree that's been growing for 10 years, and then all of a sudden like something went wrong and you weren't able to save it. It's like that's one of the things that I've really taken away, is like I've had to accept that you're dealing with part of nature and you can't control it.
It's a
And
lot.
you're going to kill things,
Right.
and you're going to fail, and it's not that whole thing, it's not really a failure, but things are going to go awry, and you just have to keep coming back.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads into another kind of question I like have, is what is some easy approachable advice for someone wanting to get into growing their own food, or even even starting with house plants, people that don't have that don't think that they have a green thumb.
Yeah, I would say just start. I mean, really is the best suggestion. Houseplants are okay.
Yeah, you got them all
Um,
around you. We can't quite see
so
them in this exact angle of my screen, but I think I can actually move this over because I
my
do want to
partner
see them.
does the houseplants. I mean, she's got like a couple
Yeah.
hundred, I think, in the house now, but it's actually that's her obsession. But I would say if you're going to try a houseplant and you're interested in growing food, you can just as easily put a vegetable seed in a pot inside. It's not easy per se, but if you have enough light, if it's by a window, and just start, do it. And almost anybody, almost anywhere in the world can grow food. It takes seeds and water and light at the most basic level, and just gotta start somewhere, and the more you do it, the more you'll learn. And I feel like the radishes are one of the easiest things. They're 30 days, one of the shortest things as well, as far as annual vegetables to grow. And so, put some radishes in a pot or something, or throw them if like you have a balcony, or if you're have a small backyard, just like put some in the ground, and I've heard so many stories of people saying like the first time they harvested like a vegetable, an annual veg, that they're just like it's just like there's this like warm feeling you get, and you know it just like does something to you.
It did. I mean,
Um,
I would definitely echo that
yeah,
sentiment whenever I finally like I was seeing the ground like blowing up from these potatoes having grown underneath, and how the sheer amount of potato that came out from one plant was like, I felt so good. I was like, I did something well. I have 2 bowls of potatoes on my counter, and this is incredible.
yeah.
Way more than I thought I was going to have.
That's it's almost like magic how plants grow. Like it grows from what, a little seed, or
Yeah.
potatoes. Usually they're grown from seed potatoes these days, but yeah, they seed out as well. Yeah, it feels good, and it doesn't take a lot to just put some seeds in the ground or in a pot. I always say the ground because we've got plenty of neighborhoods around here. But then I like to try to not exclude like city dwellers too, who may be in an apartment or a condo, or not have as many resources. Period. The other thing you can do is, I'm an advocate. I haven't done much of it, of guerrilla gardening. So, a city space that may be overlooked. You just throw
No,
some seeds out there.
just like go plant, see if it comes up later.
Yeah, or obviously community gardens and things like that.
Mhm.
So if you are in a space that you're not able to do it at home, there's a lot of urban environments, I think, these days that are coming along for community gardens and just getting involved. And I think that's a good place to start, also because in my experience those organizations are very community driven, and they want people to succeed and have a good time and learn. So that's a good opportunity as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And I talk a lot about annual veg, but I want to specify that it's a whole nother deep dive rabbit hole. But yeah, I don't think annual veg is the way going forward. I like it. It's fun. It's a quick turnover, but a combination of annual vegetables and perennial plants, both like what we would consider weedy plants that can be medicinal and nutritious, as well as perennial.
Like dandelion.
Yep, dandelion, fruits and nuts, perennial plants.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's another thing I would love to do on my own property in the future, is like have that nice balance.
Yeah.
So.
And what has been the most challenging thing to grow? Like, what has been the most challenging thing to retain life in? Or even to get started? Because I know some plants are just like the hardest part is getting them started. Once they're started, they're fine, but like getting that to take root is hard.
I'll give you a short-term answer. Like, I think the bigger answer for me is that it's seasonally dependent. Different times of different years and different times of the year, I'll have difficulty with different things.
With different challenges, sure, yeah.
Conditions change, and these seeds aren't germinating like I think they should, or that fruit tree is like got a fungal, it's got like rust, leaf rust, or again, it's like constantly changing, which it keeps it exciting and it keeps it frustrating. And but this year I had trouble with tomatoes. Seeds germinated and they got a couple inches tall, and I had a really hard time getting them to grow further than that for some reason. So that's my thing this season. I've had a lot of issues with squash bugs this season as well. But I'm out there with a vacuum and soapy water 3 times a week, so we're getting past it. But yeah, on the whole, it's every season is different. Between the climate and user error, it's every season is a struggle in the best way possible.
Yeah. I know that you said you had taken some notes. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you any part of this topic that you were thinking about that we haven't broached, or any part of it that you would like to talk about?
I would just say the only other thing that I had written down is, another plus for people doing it themselves, like growing food, is another one of the benefits is that it's super fresh, more nutritious usually because it's harvested way closer to the time it was consumed. So that's kind of cool to think about. And also the fact that okay, so across all plants, but again, just kind of my mind going back to annual veg, like one of the other cool things is that you have so many options of varieties. So you've got, I love growing squash in particular. So you've got like your butternut squash and your yellow crookneck and your zucchini, but then you've got hundreds and hundreds of varieties of all plants. But we'll just take squash as an example. But you can grow so many different kinds, and you can get in the store for multiple reasons, like commercial sellability, I think, is a big part of it, and trucking it across the country, across the world.
Already selling squash, why sell another kind of squash?
All that, and like specifically with like certain annual veg, like tomatoes, they grow a lot of them commercially for easeability of like shipping, like not being damaged. So like a lot of the heirloom varieties are a lot more tender. They're big. The flesh is really soft, and like it'll break really easily. So it's harder to ship those.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
There's other reasons too, but just that's kind of one thought. So yeah, that's my other main thing is like there's so many different kinds you can grow. It's like fun. I get so bored with going to the store and getting the same fucking 10 kinds of vegetables. Like
that's basically where I'm reaching now.
So boring.
I know what I like, but like I don't want that. I don't want to go into the store and be like, well, I do like these 6 vegetables more than I like these 6, but I enjoy these 6 as well. But they're all I have is access to these 12 to 15 vegetables or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I think supporting your local farmers market is a good way to do it. Growing your own is a good way. And also learning more about like foraging and wild harvesting. That's another goal of mine is like the more I can plant and not have to replant is great. And also the more I can just go out, learn about going out and identifying and harvesting. There's so many things around us that are nutritious and tasty that we don't necessarily think of as food, and that I think could vary the diet.
It's very true. When I was up in Oregon, I was eating like a gallon of blackberries a day. And that is just because like everywhere I went, there was blackberry bushes. And so like easy snacks on the trail was like just run your hand through a blackberry bush and eat it. But like outside of that, I don't like blackberries because they're just like not the flavor. It's just not a great flavor for me. Like a singular blackberry that I would go to the store and buy is just not. They're not ripe. They're not right either. It's just like not what I'm after. Rather than like a wild blackberry, it was like intense and incredible. And every time I home grow food is like the tomatoes or like the acid is different than any tomato I'll get in the store. Hands down, it does something different to the food that I use it to cook with than the store stuff.
Yeah, that actually touches on a great point. Like, I think that is another reason why I enjoy growing so much, is because we also cook a lot, and we really enjoy cooking. I know you've gotten into cooking quite a bit as well, but that it makes it, I think, being an enthusiast of cooking good food helps you appreciate the quality of the food that you start with.
Oh, definitely.
It's one of those things that every part builds on itself, and there's always other little details that make it fun. I would say it's hard to not fall in love with it, I feel. It's not for everybody, but I know a lot of people who think they're not good at growing things, or they're not that interested, and then they start and they develop a liking for it or a passion for it. And so I would just say, like, don't be timid and don't be scared to like try.
Yeah, it's a skill like any other. I think we've talked about quite a lot actually on this podcast and the different episodes. Probably, if not once an episode, at least every other episode, about how every hobby and every skill requires practice, requires patience, requires failing, in order to get to a point where it is like a sustainable hobby, and you just have to push through all that. So like growing plants and vegetables on your own is much the same. Like, yes, you may kill the first crop, but you'll learn a little bit from this. And if one succeeds, you'll get the feeling. And then all you got to do is chase that feeling. Like, okay, this one succeeded. Here's some things I can do. Read up on it, learn a little bit
Yeah,
about it, and practice. Like, I think
exactly.
houseplants are good for the practice of like, if you do want to do that, houseplants are great for it because it's like that kind of a little bit more on easy mode because you have a much more controlled environment. There's definitely problems
Mhm.
that come with houseplants. I definitely don't want to say like it's always easier, but it is on par. There's the easiest of the plants that don't require much but a water once a month to just even get
Yeah.
started trying to deal with a plant. Having plants around has it increases like positivity, it increases like just the feeling of the atmosphere. All the plants in our bedroom now that the vines are finally like going halfway across the ceiling is like incredible. The
Yeah.
feeling is amazing. And
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, I'm glad I don't have to take care of the houseplants inside because I do enough of it outside to where I don't want to, but I'm
right.
really glad that I'm really glad that they're here. It does. Like it changes the atmosphere, like the energy, the mood. Um, people, they give oxygen. I would debate that it's negligible the amount of oxygen they give off in a house, but whatever. I guess anything is better than nothing. But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it's
a house plant, right? In a greenhouse, you can feel the difference, right? Walking from
yeah, yeah,
outside to inside a greenhouse.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and these days, so I grow food. That's our topic, and but coming back to like the soil life, I mean, I'm also we. It's kind of funny. Some of us in the community call ourselves microbe farmers, because I do a lot of I do worm farming as well, vermicomposting. So I farm worms, and then we also farm microorganisms through like biologically rich composts, and so it's the same concept, just you're dealing with microscopic organisms. So I guess what made me think of that is like stewarding animals, which we haven't talked about a lot, but because I don't have much experience with it,
Yeah, all
some,
right.
but not much. So yeah, growing food, I think also, you know, on the larger scale, obviously for people that consume animal proteins, that is
Yeah.
part of it. And then farming, so it's like a little bit more macro scale, and then I do some farming on the micro scale. So try to like bring it to all the levels.
Yeah, I'm curious if any of, if any of the focuses and the lessons learned in microbe farming may be applicable to the future of your, what is the word you've been using? Not herd keeping, but
Stewarding.
stewarding of animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
animal
like
husbandry is a common
animal
term, but
husbandry.
I mean,
Okay, yeah.
husbandry is, I don't. It's kind of an odd term, I think. So, steward,
Yeah.
being a steward of the animals, I like the term better
Yeah,
because I think it's more inclusive.
yeah, husbandry's a strange take on what you would want with animals.
In answer to your inquiry, I mean, I obviously don't know, but I
Sure.
think it probably does. Like, it probably will. You're caring for critters, like they have to have water, they have to have oxygen. It's like, so the difference to me between cultivating plants and cultivating animals or microorganisms is
Mhm.
that the plants, it's a lot easier to leave them for a little bit of time. And when I say a little bit of time, I mean like a day, a couple days, a week. But it's not like usually not a multiple times per day thing.
Mhm.
Whereas with animals, it's an everyday thing, period. Just like if you have a dog, it's like
Right.
if you have chickens or cows or goats or sheep or horses or whatever, it's depending on the situation, obviously, as always, but a lot of times it's an everyday thing. You have to check on them, you have to make sure they're doing okay. So it's just as much work as growing plants is, animals is another beast.
Yeah, I mean the
I guess,
frequency that
no
you
pun
have
intended.
to provide personal time to this thing is lessened with plants.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
because you don't necessarily have to go back to the plant every day. The animal will
yeah,
never be at the point in which you should not check on it every day. At
yeah.
least like
I
I don't
mean,
know, a lot of house animals.
yeah. Unless you're like you got them out on the range or
Right,
something,
right.
but
A
that's
bigger
different than
stewarding a
yeah.
large plane of animals. They're good out with the food and the plain water that you
But
have.
yeah, again, as on the whole, like for especially for small to medium scale, it's an everyday thing, if not multiple times a day. So
Yeah.
I think yeah, wrapping it back around, same thing with the microorganisms. So I think it's could make that crossover of just needing a little more, TLC. Again, kind of like thinking, I try to think of all of it, even the plants, to thank them for, what they're doing and what they're providing. Same with animals, same with our cat. He's like, he's our we have the responsibility to care for him, but he's also a friend just as much, like friend versus owner. That's how I kind of try my best to mentally approach growing any kind of plant or having other animals as well. Is it's more of a relationship, hopefully back and forth, to provide a good life for whatever you're growing and to get sustenance out of it and thank it for what it's offering as well.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's important, finding the time to give thanks in our day for the things or the people or beings that help us with that, be that plants or our pets or whatnot.
So just remember, put some fish in it. That's what I tell people.
Just put some fish in it. I mean, it can work with some section of plants. You just got to put some fish in it. Awesome. Well, I think that we're going to be wrapping up here, but it was absolutely lovely having you on and going through this journey with you.
Just thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
And I find that once you get somebody talking about something that they enjoy, which is the whole reason that you're having this podcast, they can talk about it forever. So it's good. It feels good.
Right. Yeah. It just sort of kicks off. I feel like there's always a touch of like nervous energy in the beginning because it's just like, well, how is this gonna go? And then like one question always leads into another question and just like rabbit holes. And now we find ourselves
wrapping up. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was lovely having you on. We'll make sure to talk later.
All right. Have a good evening.
Yeah. Much love. We'll talk later. Thank you so much for joining us on the 7th episode of the PureJoy Podcast. It was absolutely lovely having my brother on as a guest. We're reaching actually a whole little section of family guests here on the roster. Next up, we have my sister-in-law, Susie, followed by our eldest brother, Darren, who is Susie's partner. I'm very excited to hear their topics, to pick their brain about what brings them joy. I want to give a couple thanks. One, to Casey for coming out, making some time to show up here on our podcast. I want to give a shout out to Gabe and to my partner for being absolutely wonderful and supportive here on this podcast. And I want to say thank you to MioWnize and M3rda. You can find their music in our theme songs, our intro and our outro, as well as the transitions in between the various points. I really appreciate them for allowing me to use their music. Appreciate you folks joining me on this journey, and make sure that you keep an eye out for August 28th, the next live recording, followed by the 4th and the episode release of episode 8. I will see you folks next time. Thanks for joining on the PureJoy Podcast.